Hey there folks, I'm Mark in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. You know, one of the most frustrating things as a music critic is that sometimes you can find yourself in a bubble of your own biases. You know exactly what you like and dislike, and thus, while you're actively seeking the former, if you're stuck covering the charts, you might totally forget a project even dropped that could impact them. Hence was the case this week, where I did expect that the Jonas Brothers would have a little bit more traction, and they kind of do, and I vaguely remembered that Luke Combs was moving an EP, but I completely forgot that Future still has enough chart cachet to get his new EP multiple entries. Guess I'm gonna wind up covering it after a fashion after all. Joy. But before we get to that, let's start off with our top 10 where... Okay, seriously? Old Town Road by Lil Nas X featuring Billy Ray Cyrus got another week at number 1. Yes, I get that it's dominant in every category except airplay, but at this point, I'm just kind of stunned people aren't sick of it yet. I've had the time to go through multiple backlash cycles for this song. You would think that the general public would just be sick of it, especially for it being a meme song. But that's just not the case, and right behind it's Bad Guy by Billie Eilish at number 2, holding her own on sales and the radio, even as it looks like her on-demand streaming is starting to soften up just a little bit. And right behind her, just like last week, is Talk by Khalid up to number 3, which actually sees the top spot on the radio to make up for slightly underwhelming sales and weakening streaming. Now, as I predicted, Sucker by the Jonas Brothers did rise up this week, but only to number 4, most because the sales are a non-factor and it actually got eclipsed on the radio. It lost the top spot. It did move past I Don't Care by Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber at number 5 though, which still has robust sales and great radio to make up for the fact that the streaming just is not there in the same way. I've long had questions about this song's longevity for some time, and this might be the first sign of long-term trouble. Now, the next 3 songs, they held on to their spots from last week. Wow by Post Malone at number 6, which is mostly consistent in all categories, even if radio looks like it's peaking. Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee at number 7, with better streaming but far weaker radio and sales. And Suge by DaBaby at number 8, which doesn't have much in the way of sales, but has a pretty robust streaming presence and is making a pretty credible radio run, much to my genuine surprise. What doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, is our new arrival to the top 10, No Guidance by Chris Brown featuring Drake at number 9. And while I did expect some good streaming, I'm a little bit surprised by how comfortably weak the sales and radio seem to be. I'll have a lot more to say on the song later on, but it might not have as much sustainability here, especially in the top 10. Finally, barely clinging on to number 10 spot thanks to pretty much just radio, we have Dancing with a Stranger by Sam Smith and Normani pretty much in freefall. No complaints though for me, it did have a good run. And on that note are losers and dropouts. In the latter category, there's not much really here that surprises me. Mostly just long-time losers like Night Shift by John Party, Racks in the Middle by the late Nipsey Hussle featuring Roddy Ricch and Hit Boy, Homicide by Logic featuring Eminem, and Boy With Love by BTS featuring Halsey. And then you got the one lock for the year-end list in 2019 with Murder on My Mind by YNW Melly, a song that I probably like way more than I should. Now, as for our losers, well, you got the drops-off debuts like Never Really Over by Katy Perry down to 28, Press by Cardi B at 47, and Call You Mine by the Chainsmokers featuring BB Rexha at 84. The sooner that goes away, the better. And then there are the country songs that are slipping like On My Way to You by Cody Johnson at 88, and Love 8 by the Eli Young Band at 80. Thought that latter one would have a little bit more legs. And then the 2 relative anomalies. And I say relative because Wish Wish by DJ Khaled featuring Cardi B and 21 Savage down to 70, it was just a matter of time given the temper tantrum that DJ Khaled is still throwing. And Here With Me by Marshmello featuring Churches at 80 is hitting the end of its chart run and still hasn't really justified its existence. Seriously, nobody will ever care about this song. But fine, what about our gains? Only gains, given that we don't have any returning entries this week. Well, sadly, they feel depressingly predictable too. Not really helped by most just coming off of country's regular seasonal rotation, with Rare View Town by Jason Aldean up to 68, Speechless by Dan and Shay up to 33, and Beer Never Broke My Heart by Luke Combs at 22. Although that one was probably more linked to EP success. Hell, that's probably why Pop Out by Polo G featuring Lil Little TJ got such a boost up to number 11, and entirely why Cool by the Jonas Brothers is at 44. The only other gains both came from the debuts last week. Ransom by Lil Tecca, enjoy your 6 to 8 week chart run before getting forgotten, kid, and Trampoline by Shade 89. Because quirky but understated tunes just like this, they will get brief traction but never really blow up that big. Fact of life on the Hot 100, folks, we aren't lucky enough for most of these songs to be that interesting. And on that note, now we're on to our surprisingly sizable list of new arrivals, starting off with number 100, Otro Trago by Sech featuring Darell. So you can really split our new arrivals into a few parts. Future, scattered breakthroughs mostly built off the success of new releases, and reggaeton. And just our luck, we're starting off with that. And I'll admit that Sech starts this off in a bit of a different lane. The melancholic pianos, the downbeat vibe, and then the auto-tune blankets everything, and we get the same rough reggaeton beat I've heard dozens if not hundreds of times before. And I think I have to blame Darell for why this doesn't work. Well, it's because his rougher tone wasn't meshing with the restrained tones originally, but then when you dig into the translated content, it's hard to feel like it wasn't set up for some of this pivot. From this girl nursing a drink alone at the bar to the immediate pivot to dancing and then Darell taking her home, where he talks about his Fruit Loops breakfast for her and how he will punish her for her attitude. So okay, it wasn't set up for that pivot. Seriously, Darell does not work on this song at all, but I could have seen how this could have translated as generally forgettable reggaeton. Now it's just worse. Next, number 99, Government Official by Future. For the government official will plug with Putin. So yeah, I literally forgot that Future put out his Save Me EP this week. Seriously, I did. The buzz came and went like nothing. And while I had heard this project was leaning towards his melodic Hendrix side, that's no guarantee he'd be saying anything all that tolerable or would sound all that good. And with this, well, I mostly like the darker, slightly atonal melody playing off the grinding knock of the beat, but am I really expecting to praise Future getting his squirt on the shirt, even as he swims in autotune and then adds how he's down with Vladimir Putin? I mean, credit where it's due. I do appreciate how the flexing on the song is at least slightly focusing on travel, which is a bit more unique coming from Future, but any attempt to highlight how he's getting his feelings when he drinks codeine, which again, he's freely admitted he doesn't do anymore, means I'm stuck with the general pileup of sloppy references, the warbling stabs at crooning, and a lot of murky hypocrisy that might as well represent any Future song. So again, not all that impressed. It's really saved by the production. And on that topic, number 98, Xanax Damage by Future.
Xanax doing damage, make it nice so I can handle you.
Okay, more than a few major problems with this. 1, it doesn't remotely sound finished, clocking in under 2 minutes with little coherent structure between the verses and the hooks. 2, why does Future think taking his auto-tune warble into a lower register sounds good at all off that swamped out guitar, where he nearly sounds like Cookie Monster? Number 3, why is the percussion so clean and shuddering, which doesn't match any of the rest of the song's blending and tones? And 4, with how slipshod this feels in its mixing and length, why do I have the suspicious feeling that Future is trying to bite from XXXTentacion's formula of all people, and somehow wind up working even less because you just know that Future isn't about that drug life anymore for as much as he will put it in his lyrics? It's hard to avoid the feeling that this is the cheapest and most surface level of vulnerability that Future can muster, so of course he went there. But it sure as hell does not make this remotely good. In fact, it's actually kind of bad. Next, number 93, Only Human by the Jonas Brothers.
So why would you fight and try to deny the way that you feel?
So this is the only new Jonas Brothers song that we got hitting the charts this week. And honestly, I'm more than a little bit baffled why we're getting this one, with its blocky groove, the tinkling keyboard, the continuous horn squonk, and the utter lack of a hook or a payoff. Seriously, I said this when I reviewed the album. This basically sounds unfinished, with a lot of the bass being marginalized, a lot of the buzzy synth touches that add up to nothing, no bridge or third verse after the second non-hook, and when I think that I couldn't be less impressed, we're stuck with Jonas handling the verses and the pre-choruses, sounding as stiff and underwhelming as ever. Honestly, the only place where I can see this song maybe making sense is as a lingering hangover and headache where the melody just will annoy you to sobriety, but there's nothing fun that makes me want to actually dance to this as it's trying to make you do. You couldn't have pushed I Believe or Strangers or even Don't Throw It Away as the singles instead, guys? I mean, come on. But yeah, it's not terrible, but it's not good either. Next. Number 92, Amor, Genuino by Ozuna. Sin quererlo, siempre un pensamiento tuyo llega. Yay, more annoying reggaeton, this time with one of my least favorite singers at the genre at the helm. And yet, strangely, like Otro Trago, we're opening up with a pretty sober piano line. I mean, sure, the vocals are layered really clumsily and it seems to be peaking in the mix, and Ozuna remains one of the most annoying singers in this genre, but this seems to be promising something a little bit different, mostly because we don't get any percussion. At all. Okay, more of a stripped back ballad, and honestly I don't think the lyrics are precisely bad either from what I can translate, with Ozuna professing his heartbreak as this girl apparently didn't know how to return his affections properly, which is kind of a little bit more mature, and it's not a bad sentiment to anchor this sort of ballad. It at least seems somewhat regretful and convincing, and it could probably would have worked without the ad-libs and the weird half-laugh he put on the outro, but as it is, look, I'm not an Ozuna fan, but this is a lot better than what I expected. Not bad at all. I'll take it. Number 87, Please Tell Me by Future. Please tell me how the fucking boss. Alright, last Future song here, and look who's trying to replicate the very same formula of Mask Off, just with added chipmunk vocals and diminishing returns. Seriously, the flute anchoring the main structure against a half-crude repetitive hook, it's hard not to feel like it's a very similar riff, especially with similarly empty content which might have a better structure, which in this case is Future bragging about everything he could buy in order to retain this girl's affections, which might be on the one hand reflecting his desperation for some human contact, but just so happens to serve as an obvious brag to ram in a lot of brand names into the song, so it is still really a flex. Sadly, it doesn't have the sample or the fully fleshed out groove or outro that made Mask Off work so effectively, but of the Future songs I've covered here, I will say it's okay enough for what it is, which is not saying much. Number 83, Heaven by Avicii. Okay, backstory. This was apparently a song that Avicii had written back in 2014, intended for his second album, but it wound up missing the cut and being primed for another singer, but then years later Avicii passed away, Chris Martin recorded the vocals, and after a series of leaks, we got the newest single for the posthumous album. And look, it's weird that it's called Heaven and feels genuinely weird with how much of it focuses on someone's recent passing, but also how that was clearly intended as metaphorical and trying to find a new experience in love and the rave, and now the song is trying to add more weight to it that I'm not really sure it can pull off. And Chris Martin's strangely inert delivery, it's only part of it. Not only do I swear that I've heard a very similar keyboard cascade driving a finale of a YouTube rewind or something, I think it was 2015, but when you get the plucky tones that get increasingly bright, it's hard to be pulled into any sense of melancholy at all. It's just too jaunty. And even if I do like some of the guitar accents ahead of the second hook, there's just not enough body here as a whole to this song to really jump off the page, and the tonal dissonance doesn't really help. So yeah, it's not really bad. Melodically, it's good enough to hold its own, but I'm not sure I want to revisit it given some of the tonal dissonance. Just saying. Number 69, Callaita by Bad Bunny and Tainy. Okay, last reggaeton song here, this time pairing Bad Bunny with Tainy, who I last heard with Selena Gomez and J Balvin on a Benny Blanco song with handling a lot of the production. So does this one also start with a dreary piano line? Actually no, because it's too washed out and windswept before the gritty percussion pad comes in as Bad Bunny squawks across the mix and actively peeks across the hook. Seriously, I'm not so wowed by Tainy's production work that I see what he gave Bad Bunny beyond a spare backdrop, and that's before you get to the content, which is all circling around a girl who was hurt in the past but is now cheerful and loose post-breakup, and I feel like we already heard this same idea earlier this week but worse. Look, maybe I'm missing some of the intricacy because I don't speak Spanish, but with the poor vocal mixing, I'm not sure I'm in a hurry to come back to this either. So yeah, just not much here one way or the other. Let's move on. Number 66, The Get Up by Blanco Brown. You know, I just knew there would be someone to hop on the bandwagon, but I will say I didn't expect the next country rap song to come from a relative unknown signed to Broken Bow of all things. Explains why it's actually on the charts. Now, Blanco Brown does have some credits behind the scene as a co-producer for Chris Brown and Pitbull, but like Lil Nas X, he's used his industry connections and TikTok to get this challenge on the Hot 100, and honestly, this might actually be more country than Old Town Road. The pedal steel, the deeper acoustics, the more pronounced twang from Blanco Brown, the fact that it's otherwise a pretty goofy dance song that could easily fit into both country and rap. Hell, I think if the percussion is a little bit clunky, and it's hard not to feel like it's still kind of a joke, especially with the goofier beatboxing near the end. Like with Old Town Road, I can absolutely hear the appeal. It's certainly catchy as all sin, even if you can tell that it's playing to some pretty basic common ground between the genres, and I think Old Town Road might have a little bit more staying power and unique punch. But yeah, this is fine, maybe even good. Now granted, I can see this becoming industrial grade annoying in a week, so we'll have to see, but otherwise, yeah, check it out. Number 62, Even Though I'm Leaving by Luke Combs. So I find it kind of amusing that Luke Combs has reached a point where even his EPs are moving to sort of units where just that release can notch songs on the Hot 100. I'm not sure he's reached the territory of being able to trigger an album bomb on streaming yet, but he's certainly getting closer. And I'm kind of glad that is the case, because this might be one of his best charting songs to date. And look, I will admit a bit of bias here. I'm a sucker for father-son songs that reflect heartfelt emotions and vulnerability that are rising to the forefront, especially when the arc goes from childhood to enlistment to the father passing. It puts it in very similar territory as Letters from Home by John Michael Montgomery, or Live Like You're Dying by Tim McGraw. And I honestly think this song might be able to go toe-to-toe with those, and that's a high statement of quality. The great, warm, rich acoustics where the texture balances out the tone really well, the real pedal steel, an organic foundation in the percussion and the bass, all of which fits the gruffness in Luke Combs' voice, where for once he's actually underplaying a little bit, and he sounds excellent. I mean, if I want to nitpick, I do think some of the backing vocals might not have been needed around the hook and instrumental bridge, but that's such a small detail that doesn't take away from just an excellent country song. So yeah, it's the best thing that Luke Combs has ever shipped to radio, and might be among one of the best songs he's ever made. So yeah, highly recommended. Nashville Radio, it's up to you now. Don't screw this up. This is great. And finally, number 9, No Guidance by Chris Brown featuring Drake.
You got it, girl, you got it.
Okay, look, my issues with Chris Brown, they're well documented, so I understand how it could have come across from me to come up here and say the only reason this debuted this high is because OMG, Chris Brown and Drake finally made up. But am I the only one who thinks that this could have actually worked if it was just Drake on this song, who can actually match the faint atmospherics pretty well with some genuine subtlety against that faint sample? And even then, it feels really clunky when you drop the trap drop in for the final verse, with Chris Brown's auto-tuned yelps cutting through and adding nothing. But that's the awkward thing about this song. You would think that Chris Brown and Drake would have some sort of significant interplay if they're both singing about possibly the same girl, but they've got shockingly little chemistry, and Chris Brown's heavily multi-track brang doesn't match at all with the downbeat atmosphere of the production. Hell, where's Bryson Tiller when you need him? And more to the point, for as much as Drake will try to acknowledge how self-assured and really put together this girl is in her life, I mean, it's pandering, it's projecting, but it's generally a little bit more slick about it until he makes that dumbass Candyland line. I mean, nice for what's still better in that lane, but I see what you're doing, Drake. But then Chris Brown is trying to get up in her face and overplays everything, proving once again how he's got so little subtlety or control or maturity. But overall, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure this was the reunion track that earned the hype. It might not be precisely bad, mostly thanks to Drake for once, but I can't say it's good either. And honestly, not sure it's good enough to last. But that was our week. And man, it seems like a lot of stuff here is not worth caring about one way or the other, probably will wind up forgotten. Now for the worst, let's go with Xanax Damage by Future, with Otro Trago by Sech featuring Darell as a dishonorable mention. One being unfinished and really terrible, the other making a mess of something that could have just been inoffensive. Now for the best, well, yeah, no question that Even Though I'm Leaving by Luke Combs is running away with that, but honorable mention might be a little bit trickier, And believe it or not, I think I'm going to go with the Get Up by Blanco Brown, if only because it's catchy, distinctive, and for such an obvious bandwagon jumper, might just have more legs than you would expect. But for next week, I would put money on those 2 new Drake songs making a run next to Taylor Swift. Just watch and see. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.